Good afternoon, dear colleagues. So we start our meeting, which is the dialogue with aircraft manufacturers, new approach to modern aircraft MRO. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, we do not have anyone from Airbus. It was not possible to get his presentation electronically. So today we will have also presentations and a discussion from the Irkut Corporation. The first presenter is Konstantin Kuzmichov, Deputy Head for Maintenance Operation, and it will be the continuation of the 2019 presentation, what Irkut promised, what they fulfilled, and what they would like to do in the future. Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me, or should I use a mic? I will introduce myself. My name is Konstantin Kuzmichov. In the past, my company was called the Sukhoi Civil Jet. So currently, I represent the Irkut Corporation, the regional aircrafts. And in my presentation, we also have the Sukhoi Civil Aviation. I'm currently responsible for the maintenance, and my department deals directly with the improvement of maintenance and repair efficiency. I'm currently a co-chair of an industrial committee for operation within the maintenance and repair process. As for the Superjet, as for the same MS-21, we also do the analysis in order to develop the maintenance tree. So I'm currently also run a comprehensive project how to improve the SSJ 100 maintenance. Last year, when you attended this session, I was also making my presentation at MRO Russian CIS 2019, and I told you about the main events we were implementing for Sukhoi Superjet. The main aim was to reduce cost in order to increase the operational efficiency, in order to increase the reliability of this aircraft. So all these things which were covering the MSG process. As for my presentation, it will be about two key points which I would like to highlight. First, I would like to this is optimization of maintenance and repair, and the second part will be about introducing new procedures, new technologies which are currently not available in the world. So the Irkut regional aircraft is probably the first one in the world where we'll talk about the aircraft fields monitoring. As for our main measures, they were aimed at simplifying the line maintenance. So if we talk about Sukhoi Superjet, about the minimal operating mode, when the operator gets the highest fine in terms of maintenance cost per flight hour. So today we have the MRB report revisions approved, and the operators can do only two-phase maintenance during the year without any additional stops of the aircraft. If we ask for the scope of maintenance during the line maintenance is decreased by 50%, it is not really good for MRO organizations, but a really nice thing for operators. This second key moment, we do not have any calendar limitations, so with a Sukhoi Superjet, you won't have any works due to the calendar. So it depends on how often, how much you fly. If we talk about the base maintenance, about the heavy checks, here we have one of the so-called optimizing approaches in order to optimize the aircraft efficiency, in order to decrease the operating cost. First of all, that is the optimization of heavy check optimization. You will have a set of actions to confirm the efficiency of your maintenance or your sampling program. I think is something what you already know. We are doing some actions and measures in this direction. For example, we do it for landing gear, for the airframe, and globally, we can say now that the aircraft becomes much more comfortable for technical stuff, for operators, and your operating costs are going down step by step. The second key issue is something what I would like to show you. In 2018, the International Council for Maintenance, which has the main aviation authorities and aircraft manufacturers, and also the Irkut regional jet is also one of the stakeholders. So this council approved the IP 180. It is the aircraft health monitoring, which allows within the MRB process to develop and to implement the so-called an alternative maintenance. And these are so-called alternative task or HM hybrid tasks. An operator have an option to choose either to go in line with the classic form and structure of maintenance or to use the AHM procedures and to fulfill the completely alternative tasks when he controls the systems or components, when he predict their state, or to run hybrid tasks, so you will also control the perimeters and you will also do some classic maintenance too, because the Sukhoi Superjet is a pretty modern aircraft. So in this case, there are two ways how this HM can be used. Either you can use the on-board CMS system, or the dual kilowatts aircraft condition monitoring system. Because the CMS works more with the information system of the aircraft and collects information about the mistakes and can also run autonomously the system, but condition monitoring system collects all parameters which are analyzed afterwards. One of the key moments which is quite important for Sukhoi Superjet, here you will be able to use the CMS system in almost to the full extent. We give a chance to the operator to use the aircraft opportunities and the functions of existing systems in order to do the alternative maintenance. It simplifies the whole process. That's why we uh, usually renew the central maintenance systems, the CMS. We also improve the correlation between different faults and statuses. We analyze how the system interacts with other systems and subsystems, and we have a chance to identify the fault or pre-fault conditions. And operators can do not only the scheduled checks, they can also allocate some fault or pre-fault status with the current documentation, can also link them with the FIM procedures if you need to eliminate a certain fault, or you can connect them with the MAL procedures if you need to do a certain preventive maintenance. That's actually about the correlations. The second part is the automation. When an operator implements the AHM procedure, he will get a set of maintenance tasks which can be performed alternatively, not by your hands but also by digital systems. And one of the options is the automated maintenance. So operators will be able to run whole checks with an automated control. In this case, operational data from the central maintenance system are analyzed, and some other systems are also tested in order to identify the so-called pre-fault conditions and statuses. It also helps to decrease the maintenance scope significantly because the central maintenance system at Sukhoi Superjet is pretty well developed. And the second one is the aircraft condition monitoring or trend monitoring is something what you should be aware of, and Sukhoi Superjet has the required software and a system which can monitor and forecast the system status based on several certain parameters. As for the Sukhoi Superjet, the AHM procedures are currently implemented. Implementation of AHM procedures has the top priority, so the other aircraft manufacturers cannot at the moment present the AHM procedures, so we as Sukhoi Superjet will be the first one. Probably that's all from my side, and now we will be happy to take your questions. Constantine, I would like to add from my side, because I'm working at the Airbridge Cargo. We have a significant fleet of 747-400, and we also have 747-8, and these aircraft are pretty new and have also new electronic systems, including HM. And it took a certain time for us to work together with Boeing in order to identify the critical values for parameters in order to track this pre-fault status of your aircraft. And now you include the predictive maintenance in your maintenance program. That's your peculiarity exactly. We have two key documents, MPD and MRB report. MPD is something what is used by operators or planning organizations in order to schedule the maintenance. And the MRB report is the basic document, is a certifying document which certifies the minimum scope of maintenance for an aircraft, and the MRB process allows to develop this maintenance task, which will be included in the minimum scope for maintenance in order to continue the airworthiness. As for the Superjet, the MRB process includes the HM procedures, which will be included into the MRB reports as alternative maintenance tasks. So you will be having a classic maintenance task, and if you as an operator decide to use the HM procedures, you can also refer to the alternative chapter or section, which will have also this alternative task. You won't do the classic maintenance, you will do the HM procedures. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Oh, you are welcome. Please use the mic. So, also, please introduce yourself. Alexei Sinitsky, Infamous Consulting. Also, would like to add something to what you said. So the operators have now a choice. It can be an option either to go a classic or standard way, or to go a new way, and you give it as an option, but it's not obligatory for an operator to go just this way only. This or that way is only. And my question about the cost, what is more preferable for operators in this case, where the costs are lower? And all these systems usually depend on the amount of data, on the amount of statistics available. We really would like to have an operator who goes a classic way to collect this data and to provide this data to you or to anyone else in order to collect and analyze this data. How do you resolve this issue? As an OEM, I can only confirm we get data from all flying aircraft, information on all the faults. It is not a problem for Sukhoi Superjet. We have all data available. It is not a problem for Sukhoi Superjet. And as for the improve the correlation of faults in the central management system, we use this data as an example. For example, if you have a flight delayed, there is a fault which is the reason of this delay, and if we use only historical data, this fault was usually eliminated successfully and the aircraft was able to depart. But the CMS will propose you to eliminate this fault by this way. So in this case, we use historical data, and we also use the fault predicting system, and we improve the system's internal algorithms. When we talk about AHM, this is first about the state of every single aircraft, about individual properties and parameters of a particular aircraft, whether this aircraft is good enough to perform a flight, whether it is really airworthy or not. Thank you, Konstantin. More questions? Yes, please.
Igor Kirpichov, professor of the Moscow Institute for Civil Aviation. You've said that you have all the data for any aircraft that is available. So how do you get this data? Well, I do not collect this data, but my company does, according to the procedures approved by all the operators. But how do you get this data in particular? I am concerned by the reliability of the data you get. I am asking you a specific question. There are parameter data and there are process data. So these data concern parameters and processes. So how do you get them? Well, actually we get data in two parts. If we talk about processes, for example, maintenance itself, right. So this data is what we get as we use the IP44 document. This is data on efficiency of maintenance. So you want to tell us about the methods you use. Well, we already used the data. As for the methods, they will be introduced when our MRB process operators are ready to implement this process. Okay, what about the failure data? We get the failure data from our operators in a digital form. But this is part of what process? Well, I think I understood what you were trying to say. The answers are not very optimistic. So it's a report about reports. Thank you. I will help Konstantin a little bit. Actually, in the second part of his presentation, he is going to talk about what operators need. And he would like to offer a comprehensive solution for operators regarding those aircraft they produced. This will be a comprehensive product that covers maintenance and spare part provision. And I think that feedback from maintenance stations will be simplified and optimized. Yes, it was a subject that we probably didn't we want to go into cover, but now that we have some time now, because there's no Airbus. But I have a question to the audience. So ERCOT is working on providing the operators with a certain package of services that would include the whole range of maintenance, including manufacturing the aircraft and finishing with the overhaul of the landing gear and so on. So it's the full cycle of maintenance of aircraft. And I had a question to the audience. We have representatives from MRO organizations and from the operators, but do they think that such an offer would be of interest to Sukhoi Superjet 100 aircraft? How interesting is this offer? And there's another interesting question. What's the fair price that would MRO organizations name? How much can it cost if we are to determine a fair price? And what's the fair price from the point of view of the operators in terms of flight hour for Sukhoi Superjet 100 aircraft? Does anyone want to voice their opinion? What's the fair rate per 1 hour of MRO for Sukhoi Superjet 100? Well, now that is not no one is willing to answer this question. We are moving on to the second part of the presentation, and our speakers are Yuri Logvin and Andrei Petrin. They are going to tell us everything about 3D visualization in digital documents. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My name is Yuri Logvin, and our company participates in this forum for the first time. It represents an airplane which is currently undergoing tests. I would like to tell you that it's probably for the first time that a Russian design bureau designed aircraft and prepared all the documents for this airplane in a digital form. We are using a Siemens solution. It's also a team center solution. We do not produce any paper drawings. The whole aircraft is based on a 3D model. And this is also the information we send to the plant, to the manufacturing plant. This design is also available in a JT format, which is used for the operation documents. As we talked to other software developers in Russia, we found out that only the former GSS approves of such a technology, single documentation together with the design documents. And we have such a connection, such a feature. So we believe that we run those documents in a better way. And the probability that some documents will contradict the actual facts at the physical airplane is minimized. What we use is the ProGraphics solution. We also use the 3D system, which is shown here, and here on this slide you can see how design documents are connected with the operating documents. And the capabilities of 3D cardboard software enable us to use 3D images or even 3D animation of those documents. This slide shows an example. Here you can see traditional documents in 2D and 3D documents. MS-21 aircraft has documents in version 4.1 as for the most complex procedures, and there's about 150 procedures for which we design a 3D imaging. Right now, I will try to launch this imaging, this animation. Here you can see what we have. Here you can see the 2D documents and the 3D documents. Well, unfortunately, it was impossible to push this button, but I think that this video gives you a great understanding of to what detail we can explain certain work. You can see how this work is done, and I would like to tell you that as 3D documents are designed, some mistakes were identified. Which were made as the operating documents were prepared. Working with this animation enabled us to find and eliminate such mistakes. You can see that we can actually make a close-up on anything you want. Here you can see how this part is disassembled. You can stop this video at any moment. You can look closer or from farther away. You can change the scale, and you can move on to the 2D documents themselves. At the plenary session, one person asked a question. Actually, it was a representative of Helicopters of Russia. What do you mean by interactive documents? And here is what it means. Actually, These documents are provided in an interactive format. We have an XML imaging, and the PDF is the authentic copy. These documents will be provided to the operators via the portal, and all the updates will also be provided via the portal. The availability of such documents, and I will remind you once again that it's simplified design documents which comply with the real spare parts and assembly components. So it's in full compliance, maybe with some simplification. And of course, it was simplified a bit so that these files are not so big and you can use them on your tablet when doing maintenance and repair operations. I'd like to tell you that as we use 3D videos, we can also use augmented reality when doing some work. And you can also use these documents for training purposes. At the plenary session, it was said that once you have completed a job, there is a certain break before you move on to the next job, and you can open your 3D document and see how a certain job is performed. And if we talk about the retraining of personnel and improving their skills, these documents can be shown in a learning center, or we can actually run tests using these documents. The use of such interactive 3D models also gives you possibilities to use them for other purposes. And a colleague of mine, Andrei Petrin, will tell you how you can register various failures that take place in an airplane by using these 3D documents. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrei Petrin, and I'll tell you how to use 3D visualization in after-sale service. For example, we developed some software which is called 3D Cardboard, and actually we use the same system. The whole goal behind development of this system is about creating a single information space so that we can fully understand where certain failures are located, and round-the-clock access to this information is provided. Here is one module of this system. It's called it looks like this. Here you can see different failures which are present here in an interactive table. This model, together with this interactive table, allows you to move on between failures, and as you put your cursor on a specific failure or fault, you can see its detailed description. Or you can download a more detailed imaging of each particular failure or problem. This model is shown in great detail. It uses the module of SRM, and actually it takes only 10 megabytes. We have different tools here, those which can control its visualization. For example, we can switch off certain elements of the structure or make them transparent, What is also important is the functions in a system. For example, as you move a cursor on a system, you can look at its features. You can also work directly with the system. You can identify certain elements of the structure, which is very important because sometimes there might be issues when you look for certain elements in the structure, and the system will help you find them. Now the most important part, that's the registration of the problems or faults. On your 3D model, these faults, these failures are shown as different parts of the images, and you can register them. For example, a specialist has found a problem or a technical issue, and now he wants to register this issue in the model. He uses this 3D model and he actually indicates this spot, and then he gets access to all this information. And this is complied with the actual airplane, because this is how the airplane is produced. And we can identify each default with specific geometric lines or patterns. And then we can assess this failure or this fault, and all the parameters are indicated. It's all connected with the appropriate documents, and then the experts will only have to decide whether this failure is okay, or it should be changed. Now there's the 3D scanner, and this is how you can put this information into the system. Based on the parameters, the system provides recommendations, and those recommendations are based on what we have in the guidelines, in the manuals. In some cases, we can continue the flights. In some other cases, if the failure is too serious, you need to contact the manufacturer. So this is what we need, and we can write comments to these systems, and we can add photos. This is what concerns the registration of the failures. As you hover your cursor over it, you can have some brief information about this failure or fault, and then the entire information is stored in XML language, and it enables you to customize your report. For example, you can use other geometric patterns. For example, this can be used to represent scratches or cracks. Or you can register corrosion by drawing the area of the corrosion itself. And now you have the whole information about all the sports with corrosion, and then this information is registered. Along with the registration of the failures, you can also add the fact that repair was conducted. For example, here the manufacturers can issue an approval sheet, repair approval sheet, which confirms that the repair was conducted. Here you can add a photo about how it looks after the repair.
As for the repair itself, and this information is linked to the document revisions. You will be also always able to track what document revision was used for repair, whether a newer version is available, and you can also create a generate report for the repair done, and all the information is stored in our database. As for the reports, you can also generate reports for every single repair or damages. You can also create a dental and buckle chart for the whole aircraft. You can also filter all these defects, and all information in this system is structured It is not in a chaotic way. You can manage this information and you can use this information. That's why the summary of what I showed you, the model which was developed can also use the 3D models, can register the defects on the 3D model of an aircraft, and can also you can also add the images of these defects and damages, and you can also register these damages and get the recommendations. You can also register the repairs done and generate repair reports. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions or comments to the you Yuri? I have some questions about the practical issues. The 3D documentation. What is it? Is it just a training material or just an addition to what we have, or a real documents we can use? That's an addition to the documents you can work with. There will be 150 modules to the maintenance documentation. I'm not talking about the commercial issues now. I'm currently interested how this 3D documentation can substitute the standard conventional documentation. If it is the fact, did you also keep study the compatibility for compatibility with a human factor, whether a human factor can create faults during the maintenance? The 3D documentation decreases the human factor faults. Is it a scientific way or is it just your opinion? Because this is a very beautiful picture, but it can be really understood in a different way if I read it line by line. And we have also 2D and 3D set of documentation, and these two sets are authentical. So one cannot work without. Can we use 3D only? I'm apologizing for interrupting you. You can choose any set of view during the first picture when we showed it to you. You can see 3D. You can choose the 2D, what you prefer. Our specialists are currently testing and maintaining the aircraft. So they tested the system and said 3D was better. And we also have cases to how this kind of 3D model is used. But in this case, it is easier to understand 3D documentation than the 2D documentation. But anyway, you can also always make a stop and get a deeper understanding. And another question, how this product is compatible with the current maintenance systems like AMS. As for the Aeroflot, we are currently working with Aeroflot, and now after sales department is working with Aeroflot, so it has the set of 3D documentation. And what is about compatibility? I will try to help here. This HTML application can really function on every single device, even on your smartphone. You don't need any plug-ins. And the question is how AMOS can really work with this 3D documentation. The question is to AMOS, because this documentation will be provided through the MS View portal. You can also get to the 2D and 3D documents, and you can also download everything, and we'll be working on every single device. We developed this documentation with line with the S1000D, and if we have some peculiarities, these are the issues with AMOS. You have to resolve them. I know that Aeroflot already submitted an inquiry to the AMOS software developers, and while AMOS is not able to show everything completely, other systems are compatible with our 3D documentation. Also, I would like to ask you about the training and about possible mistakes. There are some really clear things like insert a screw in a hole. That's quite easy to do, and there are more complicated things which can visualize, and the actions are not so simple. And if you can also show where the human hands are located in this case when you do something, because even the beginners sometimes don't really understand how to actually climb, how to get to a particular part which needs to be, for example, dismantled or fastened. When the aircraft was planned, so we used a lot of different softwares to model different actions, and a virtual human being was fulfilling all these actions, and a set of tools for maintenance were also mo- modeled. We also understood how a certain tool can be turned, can be exist in a 3D reality. I don't really want to praise our 3D system. I just want to tell you that we are using this particular software, and probably you in your life were able to come across with this kind of system when you decided to, or you to have a new kitchen. So many kitchen manufacturers are using a similar 3D software. However, some separate process which are quite complicated, so we are not actually currently manufacturing 50 plus aircraft a month as the Airbus does. However, some assembling processes are not be cannot be really clear for technicians, and this kind of software, 3D software, really helped and assisted us in assembling. And before doing the assembling, our assembling engineers used to get trained on this particular software. As for the augmented reality, we also used several tools, and we think that probably in the nearest future it will become possible. And even the Google glasses could be used here. But I think we can use these Google glasses in a slightly different way. But we have the whole fundament in order to make the next step. Even with the current 3D documentation, you will be able to exist in augmented reality as soon as our IT partners provide you these tools which will free your hands. There are also issues related to the state regulation. That's probably a question to you, even to Russian Aviation Authority. And the Swiss guys also showed you a presentation about the digital signature. As for Russia, we we have at least this, so at least a qualified digital signature, and this is a kind of blocker for us. So in this case, we are not really able to provide you the digital signature. We need to sign the documents by hand. As for the hands, I haven't seen it anywhere. There can be kind of virtual guy. It can exist like an assistant in a program. We can also think about it. But dear colleagues, we presented to you a working prototype. 3D documentation is ready. What Andrei showed to you is a working prototype. So we have this system here on a laptop. We can show you how it functions in a real time mode. It is much more interesting than in this cartoon shown during the presentation. But in order to consider the wishes of a user, we need to have this feedback from you, and we would like to find out your wishes, what you would like to see in this kind of program. This project is very interesting. That's why I like to ask you professional questions. In this case, operational documentation, that's about aircraft. Do you have this documentation, your 3D model, and will be also used as the type structure? And if you have it, who is going to assess it? I'm trying to remember it, but I don't really remember it. If it is not there, and the question which is asked by the colleague from the airflow, they are really very exact questions. How to use, is this documentation approved? It is, well, I'm sure that is the way we have to go. But now, do you have the approval of this documentation at the type certification stage? As for the certification, it is not the fact, because the last version of the approved certifying basis, probably from of the last year, and the internal corporate order to create this kind of documentation was just before the New Year Eve. If I look at our technology, how we develop this operating documentation, I think in order to transfer everything into the 3D model, it doesn't really require a lot of resource, because it is based on the technologies, how we develop an aircraft. Everything, if you don't do it, it will be just a toy. And who is going to assess and approve this kind of documentation? I know all certification centers who are doing with the type of aircrafts. Please find anyone who can really approve it. You are going the right way, but we also need to resolve these issues with the approval and certification of your 3D documentation. Mr. Pridanikov comes to us from time to time, so next time I will ask him that it would be really great to do it. It is something what you should do. And a question from Airfloat asking about whether it is a toy or it is a good alternative or just a reference for us. In terms of certification, we all developed the so-called methodical recommendations how to use the electronic documents, which were actually before the change of the last aviation rule. And as aviation rule 21 doesn't have this kind of things. Sorry. There was a new Russian aviation rule 21 of December 2019. So we also issued a new version of this methodical recommendation for these guidelines, and a Russian Aviation Authority promised us to publish it and to consider it and to publish. So you're going really ahead the current legal framework. In this case, you need to kick the legislator in order to improve and update the current legislation. We also had a meeting with the Ministry of Transportation in Russia. We will certainly do it. I promise you. That's how it looks like now. Next question. Yelena Mudrigo from Boeing. My question about the electrical part. Do you have any connection between the wild diagram manual and 3D? Siemens has this kind of solutions, how to come over from the 3 electric wire plan to the real harnesses and 3D modeling. Because the aerospace systems, it's another company which develops with us this 3D documentation, and this company used the Yakub software. They really show everything in an X, and then they show in Yakub. And I don't think this Yakub software is good enough for it. And unfortunately, it has a lot of disadvantages we would like to eliminate, to rectify. So, what can I tell you right now? When PTC was selling a certain software in Russia, it had this kind of opportunity how to use this kind of graphical interface for this kind of issues. Ruslan Ivanov from Ruslan Techniques, even more than 20 years ago, I was studied at the university as a UA24 software, and before an exam, when I really understood how the system was functioning, when I really looked at 20 different posters, I really wanted someone to create a cartoon about that system. I would be able to understand that system within 2 days, and now we can see it that my dream started coming true. Your cartoon already exists, but as we know, if we talk about the maintenance manual, it has description, chapters, description, and operations. What how good these chapters are covered with your 3D visualization system. And my second question is training materials for future trainings depending on the aircraft types and how it will be done. As for the 3D visualization, we are planning to use it in the IMM procedures, into the dismantling and assembling procedures. The procedures are most complicated ones for technicians. Our maintenance planning department prepared it. As for the descriptions, we are not planning to use the 3D module, but the 3D module can be also used in order to identify the exact location, the exact address for a particular component only for the dismantling and assembling procedure. But in the future, you can use this documentation also for the training purposes because it has a lot of information. But 3D visualization is not a cartoon, it's a complete procedure. You can also pose it, you can also look at this certain component from different angles and sides. You can zoom in and out because we need a description of this kind of complicated system like fuel system or hydraulic system. We have a lot of pressure. It would be really simplify the understanding for technicians how the system functions or a certain unit functions. We also develop this documentation in the EATR format, and it will be an interactive illustration, and we can also use these interactive illustrations for different data modules and procedures. It will be covered by the EATR format. This visualization is just an addition to the EATR. So you have also not only the technicians but also the software developers who can really combine it. Yes, we have the so-called software developers and illustrators. The software developers, they deal with the particular modules, and illustrators visualize all this content.
Light Safety International.
Go ahead.
So you've talked a little bit about training so far, and a little bit about I understand this isn't regulatory approved yet, but in regards to training and practical training, is FATA open to accepting this as a replacement for the aircraft for all of the practical training required?
So far it's not approved, and so far it's not even in plan to be a part of training materials. But maybe in future as a supplemental documentation is possible.
Dear colleagues, once again, our illustrators do not draw anything.
Once again, our illustrators do not draw anything. We just have a simplified image of a spare part as it is. We have a simplified visualization. It's very good for training. And of course, you can use it for any purpose. But once again, we need the regulatory framework to change for that. There's a process of manufacturing something. And Mr. Kirpichov also asked his question about it. And he was probably afraid that 2D was compliant with the real documents and 3D had some differences. But with the use of the technologies that we offer, there is no difference between 2D or 3D. Both of them are compliant. Anyway, when you watch this on your smartphone or a tablet, we can't have, well, actually we have all the details, but there are still certain limitations regarding the visualization of this information. But this information can't mislead you, unlike 3D, unlike 2D. In 2D, you don't always understand how to do this. In 3D, you always understand how to do this. Because when you design the technical maps for assembly of an aircraft, you use the same things. And here you model things. So it's like you disassemble the aircraft. It's like the reverse process. And Cartoner 3D has these functions. We like them. That's why we decided to use those 3D visualization functions. Dear colleagues, thank you very much. If there are no more questions, then let us thank the presenters. If someone would like to see how it really works, you can go to our booth and Andrei will show you how this really works. You can push the buttons and rotate that and so on and so forth. So if there is someone who would like to see this, we can go downstairs or we can actually do this later. All right, it's on the first floor, the ground floor. And there is a laptop there. And with this laptop, we can show you how the system really works. The question is not being asked in the mic. Well, Alexei Smagin will send you an email. Please leave your business cards. But here, on the ground floor, we can show this to you. If you have a laptop, then you can go to the ground floor, to the networking area, and you can see there how it works. It's the ground floor next to the wall. Is the show of the registration system, not the documentation system, in order not to mislead you. Thank you very much for your very interesting session and for amazing discussions. We are happy to see that there have been so many questions regarding this session. We invite you down to the ground hall because here we will have another session on the present and future of MRO, a brainstorming session. Thank you very much to all the Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like to start by thanking the organizers for the opportunity to discuss such a relevant topic as the present and future of maintenance in the aviation sector. As a moderator, I will set the tone for our today's discussion, and as part of our discussion, I would like us to raise certain issues and try to answer certain questions. That is, how to move forward in the maintenance sector in the current situation. What are the prospects? What are the problems? And today I have a big delegation of speakers here with me. I think that almost all leading maintenance providers are present here, and I'm sure they have their own ideas, their own issues, and we are going to discuss them today. And our main topics, I would like to set the tone for our audience and participants here. As the organizers already wrote in our program, we would like to consider the following issues: the shortage of capacities for MRO, the shortage of hangar capacities, because it's an open secret that as soon as MRO integrated in a company has the possibility to use hangar capacities, growth begins, growth of the company, growth of the capabilities and possibilities of a company. But when those MRO capacities are missing, the company starts stagnating. There is no growth. There's the second question. What are the needs of MRO companies? We as MRO organizations depend greatly on airlines. Whenever airlines are doing well, MRO companies have work, which means that we need to resolve airlines' issues so that airlines do not need to have this non-core operation, which is complex for many company leaders. I'm talking about technical maintenance, and some airlines are afraid of this maintenance. So our task, our mission is to remove this headache and ensure appropriate maintenance for airlines. I also believe that we need to talk about linear maintenance in Russia and everything that involves it. Just one example. Many people know that Aeroflot has made a decision to establish a hub in the city of Krasnoyarsk and use two types of aircraft, 737 and Sukhoi Superjet. And A-Technics is Aeroflot's subsidiary, which means that the entire maintenance operations are provided by A-Technics. And one obvious example is that there is great experience, vast experience in creating a hub in the city of Krasnoyarsk. to support such a giant as Aeroflot. And we can't go away from optimization. We can't do without it, because supporting airlines is our goal, of course. But we need to be efficient, and MRO organizations should be efficient, which means that we need to optimize all our processes. Digitalization is required. It was already mentioned at the plenary session and at the previous session. So this is what we must do. We must reduce costs. At the same time, we need to maintain the quality of our work. We need to even improve it further. We should complete jobs within shorter deadlines without jeopardizing quality. So this is priority number one for each MRO organization right now. So I try to set the tone for today's discussion. I will be very interested in listening to each speaker regarding these issues. We can further exchange opinions, and with your permission, I give the floor to a colleague of mine, Pavel Baranov, and he will show us some slides on this topic. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I work at the A-Technics company. I'm its quality manager. I'm responsible for quality and certification. The topic of my presentation is largely about the last point mentioned by the moderator. It's about optimization of MRO. But at the same time, I would like to share my opinion about some key issues. And main challenges of the MRO industry, which will be discussed at this session as well. One major issue today is the shortage of personnel. Of course, this concerns a lot of MRO organizations, but also other market players. Even warehouse employees, because sometimes there is a shortage in high-quality auditors or warehouse experts. Why does this happen? Our industry is probably not too attractive for the young generation. So we need to make it more attractive. We need to strengthen our ties with universities so that more graduates get jobs at MRO companies. So we believe that this is the direction to choose. There's another very interesting, very important problem, the hangar capacities. Actually, this is a headache in the post-Soviet space. As for MRO organizations, they usually rent such hangars at a great price. They pay too much because of the market situation and the existing price policies. The only solution is to build new hangars in Russia, for example, in the same hubs where maintenance of different levels is going to be provided. And I believe that we need to find support from investors, from the state, and so on. And of course, we need to work on the price policies in Russia, because old Soviet facilities should not be rented at the price of new facilities. It would be a bad idea in terms of the development of the Russian aviation sector. There's another issue which I would like to talk about in great detail. This is the topic of my presentation, actually, at today's session, involving optimization of MRO. And that's an important aspect. This is about project management in the MRO area. The issue that is faced by dynamically developing MRO organizations is that the market is changing very quickly. There is a change in environment, and the problem is that management is too conservative. And how to resolve this problem? By introducing new progressive methods of management. This is what I would like to talk about. Here are the different aspects of this issue, and I'm talking about project management. In the context of the dynamically developing MRO industry, we need a systemic approach to change management. We should introduce advanced managerial approaches. As a result, MRO organizations use their limited resources in a quality way, in an efficient way. I'm talking about financial resources and time resources. Usually, the time for a project is limited. And of course, it's about human resources. Those people who implement those projects. Usually, we have a lot of limitations, but we need to introduce this project management. What is this project management about? It's when a company uses different kinds of resources, financial resources, human resources, equipment and time resources, and those resources are distributed and used efficiently and appropriately. At the same time, those resources are distributed according to the standard functions of a company. As we implement those approaches, it is particularly important for companies with young, undeveloped management areas. Companies have different stages of development, and at different stages, the portfolio of projects can vary a lot. For example, when a company is at the certification stage, for example, it opens new platforms and backshops for maintenance, those resources are distributed in such a way as to implement those projects efficiently. Sometimes some projects are aborted so that other projects are implemented successfully. When a company is more mature, all those resources are redirected towards more relevant tasks. So this is what we mean by a portfolio of projects. So what does it mean, a portfolio of projects? We need to understand what projects we have at our company, which is why we need to classify those projects. We need to categorize them. For example, in terms of localization, it can be local projects or federal projects or national projects and so on. They can also be different in terms of their scale. There are small projects, big projects, medium projects. They can be different in terms of the sources of financing, for example, and their complexity. There can be projects that will be categorized as projects conducted through the company's own money, or there is some external financing. As a team starts a project, and we talk about the managers or some third party, we need to categorize a project according to certain principles.
The project management accommodates the initiation, planning, control, and the completion of the project. We also use new project management methods. So we got these new methods from IT industry. This kind of methods like agile, when you, instead of planning, forecast or predict a certain activity. Those of us who traditionally manage different projects in a company, we usually distribute several tasks according to a certain plan or schedule. As for the agile, it is quite an interesting approach to the task. When you have the final deadline, you identify the task and you predict or forecast the result. And the project management is based on certain meetings carried out in a certain cycle, and these periodically carried out meetings are used to set new tasks to be based on those tasks fulfilled, and every stakeholder has his own or her own functions. That's a radically different approach, but it is also a working one, and I can also tell you later on where we used it in our case. So I can also give you just an example, and it is our company. So we have done lots of projects within the last 5 years. We certified the MRO stations in Vnukovo, Sheremetyevo, in Moscow, in Orenburg. We also managed to get the ratings for heavy checks for 747, for A320, and so on, also for Russian aircraft types. We also opened several stations for component service and repair, and we certified for all aircraft types which are currently operated in Russia, and we also are entitled and certified to do the even the G checks for 747 and 737, and we all have up to 4,000 employees. We also managed to automate our production. We integrated the databases. We integrated the AMS systems of the Russia Airlines and A Techniques. It was within one of our projects, the introduction of SMK and the flight operation safety management systems. And with the agile method, we increased the mobility in maintenance when we started using the mobile devices, and we also are able to get an access to AMS from our mobile devices. We also introduced the paperless technology. And as I said before, we used different methods in order to implement this project. We also used a functional method which we used to use in more progressive ones. Now we are currently systemizing the project implementation in order to resolve the projects in a certain way. and we really would like to get the result we wanted. If you have any questions, I will be happy to take them. Thank you very much, Pavel. So Pavel also gave us a little bit of theory and told us about the processes and projects which were implemented within the A Techniques company. But now I would like to come over from theory to practice in order to have a more lively live discussion. So I would like to ask every one of the panelists to give the answer to three questions. How did they cope with the lack of hangar spaces? What kind of optimizations are they currently using in their companies? What are the challenges of the airlines are usually set for MROs? And another question I would like to touch today, it still doesn't actually deals with MROs. That's the coronavirus, but we also started seeing the stagnation in transportation and a decrease of passenger traffic, and we also should expect earlier or later not the coronavirus but the consequences of these political or financial problems. Plan B exists all the time, and I would like to find out whether the MRO companies really pay attention to this kind of factor, and if they pay attention to this factor, what kind of action do we undertake, or what do you plan to undertake when a certain point is reached? And I would like to give the floor to uh, TS Technic Vladimir Burtsev. Hello, I'm probably the first one today. I think I can also start right now. I'm ready to answer these questions right now. As for the question number one, today we have a certain significant lack of qualified personnel. How do we cope with it? Certainly, I didn't expect actually how we can really cope with this question in a very broad way. So we have agreements with many education facilities in Russia, and we also provide them opportunities to have a certain training or even to become apprentices in our company. We also do research for specialists in the market. We also work very close with training center and create with some of the training centers on the programs. For example, with one of the training centers we work very closely and also prepared an ATR 72 program, which we are just about to launch. At a previous MRO conference, I was one of those who recommended to carry out such a meeting with the Russian Ministry of Education in order to identify the situation, how to continue working in this issue, because this topic is being discussed everywhere, but no real changes are made in the current training programs, so we don't really understand that the graduates from Russian universities and colleges, they cannot really good enough to get an aviation specialist certificate, and it is very bad because it also creates a significant load for us as MRO organization. As for the hangar spaces, it is not a problem for us now. So TS Technique has 3 hangars in different locations, and we're fully 100% subsidiary of the Youth Air Group, and we are covering all the airlines needs. So we work very close with the airlines, and we are really pretty sure well loaded for the upcoming 2 years, and then we'll start an active work in the open market. We already started offering our services in the open market, but we'll postpone the main activity in this area for the in the time in 2 years. As for the test technique, I can also tell you right now that we always work on particularly 15 projects. Some projects are directly under my control as CEO, and you also have a lot of projects which are probably of another level. But what do I mean is very important. Every single project should be controlled. That's why we have a Giro system, and this Giro software is very well known in the IT industry. It was developed for IT guys, but now we managed to adopt the Jira system for us, and we have been running the system for more than a year, and it helps us to use a lot of people to participate in this project and to control the project time in a very good way. And we can also set very good criteria of control. A test technique is not really willing to and not really going to resolve large scale projects, but we are currently dealing with process automation. This is the AMOS, which has been actually introduced, being currently implemented in many companies. And I also made presentations devoted to this topic many times. And the deeper you go into AMOS or into another IT project, the more parallel projects you have to run. You need to reassess, to reorient your stuff. You actually need your guys to have a different approach to the whole MRO maintenance and repair process, to the documentation. You need to change the approaches at all levels, and it is very important for every single project that everybody is really involved. It is really needed that actually everyone in your company should be involved in this process and interested in successful implementation. Otherwise, the projects are deemed to be non-successful. As for the challenges from the airlines, these challenges exist always. And the aviation market is really changing very fast today. So my colleagues can only confirm that the current fleet utilization we are facing now is an extremely high, and we didn't have it even 10 years ago. Now the flight hours on 737 classic versions requires us to change our approach to all the processes. Now the classic base maintenance period is not from September to June, but from October to May, and we need actually to decrease the downtime. It should be not higher than even 10%, and 30% was a good figure in the past. And in this case, we need to spend more money. We also need more resources, and no, and we need also to hire more people in order to resolve these issues. We do some things really good. Some of the things are for us quite long-term projects, but I think there are no questions or issues which cannot be resolved. Everything depends on your resources available. Probably that's all what I wanted to tell you. I have one more question for you. Do you cover all the youth airlines needs except for the wide body 767 with the back shops? Yes, we have it. That's good. There is at least one MRO with no lack of hangar spaces, and I would like to give the floor to Igor Panchin from S7 Techniques. Okay, so we will certainly make some presentations, and then you will be able to ask the questions. Or you can also, I can take this question right now. Unfortunately, the question is asked not through the microphone and cannot be translated. We apologize for the inconvenience. I would like to introduce myself. I'm a deputy head of the continuing airworthiness department. We all talked about programs. I agree that there are dozens of different softwares or programs, as you call them. We also talk about the flight management system, flight operations safety management system, and I think all these softwares and programs should be under the umbrella of flight management system and should be an essential part of this flight management system. But today, everything what we see, what we get, and what we read would say is really far away from the system which what you currently are running. You have different programs for your personnel, for all other things. But this particular system is described in not a complete way. It doesn't cover all the programs you run in your company's business. I would like to hear from you, including the flight management system. Because flight management system is probably a fundament for every one of us. See, both presenters just mentioned the SMS flight management system or SMS in the not deeply. So I can give you the answer on behalf of three presenters. As a CEO, I fully agree with you. So all the projects should be in one place, and SMS is really very good platform in order to track everything what is happening in the company. I think it's a very good remark from your side. See, probably in somewhere in a deeply in our mind we think, deep in our mind we think about it. Those who don't work don't make any mistakes. So innovations, new development, the implementation of SMS system. For it may be pretty quite an old thing, but we are trying to look at this old thing from a new angle, and I think the future is behind it. Dear colleagues, would you like to add anything? Mikhail, I'm fully agree with you. And Anatoly, I'm fully agree with you. If you talk about SMS, because SMS is something what is probably more clear for us, and we are currently improving the SMS, and there are also stages when it will fulfill all the regulatory requirements, also including our internal requirements. Our colleagues are talking about now SMS. It's a really bad thing that we have these two important topics in two parallel sessions, and I would like to give the floor to Igor Panchin from S7 Techniques.
Но тем не менее, если вернуться.
We digressed a little bit, but if we go back to the general view of what's happening right now, we've started talking about the people, and I think traditionally the situation is like this because we have some traditions with respect to personal training back in the Soviet Union and after the Soviet Union's collapse. So after that, some managers had to be retrained, and today young people who would really like to work as aviation engineers are few in numbers, which is why our industry is faced with the goal of resolving the personnel shortage issue. And of course, we need to work with the universities. We need to adapt the training programs we have to existing requirements and aviation rules applicable as of today. This is what concerns working with the universities. Furthermore, we need to talk to the aviation authorities, both in Russia and Europe, about simplification of personnel categories. We know that even after a university, a specialist can't work with equipment immediately. There is a time gap of 3 to 5 years. Maybe the European aviation authorities need to change something, and we need to talk about simplification of certain requirements, both in Russia and CIS and Europe. Of course, sometimes the solutions are not perfect, because those solutions result in salary raises. Sometimes one isolated company can resolve its issues, but within 3 to 5 years the problem starts affecting everyone. This is what regards people. We also work with universities, with a whole number of institutions and institutions of higher education, and we need to work on a systematic basis with it. Talking about hangars, you are quite right. In the current context, as transport capacities are becoming bigger, there is uninterrupted growth of transport capacities. So the infrastructure which used to be available is no longer sufficient to meet the needs. And this concerns the entire range of maintenance services. Each airline resolves these issues in its own way, but for a long time we only used hangars which are there since the Soviet Union or since the 1990s. We as S7 Techniques are operating in 3 different locations, in 3 hangars. But of course we need to expand. Right now we have a shortage of hangar capacities. We need more space and more resources to meet the market requirements we are facing today. Since this is not a quick process, we had delays when taking certain decisions, but of course we will keep working on this problem. Our colleagues worked faster And of course, the investment component is important here. There is a separate topic which we broached upon. This concerns the control system within our MRO organizations. And the topic is quite complex here. It's not just about MRO. In our opinion, a management system is a multi-purpose system. It's mostly the issue of management. Usually managers are those who used to be technical specialists. Most of them have Soviet education or post-Soviet education. But we never had a system of training managers in the aviation sector, which is why right now we are facing the issue of creating a management system at aviation companies, at airlines. And we are trying to create this system, but we are lagging behind our foreign colleagues who have aviation academies that train personnel not only in the area of leasing but many other areas. So we are lagging behind. There is a certain gap, but I believe that with some luck, existing management processes can be organized properly in Russia as well. And I believe that we can resolve the problems we are facing appropriately. Some of the previous speakers talked about the MRO issues and the issues of business development, but I believe that with certain managerial techniques, it is all resolvable. Sometimes we are facing problems that are a little bit different from European ones, but nevertheless, we have to use the best practices available, but adapted to the Russian market. So this is what is based on my experience. Thank you very much. We don't have much time left. And some of the other speakers have yet something to say. I fully agree with you with respect to the managers. Many managers used to be engineers. So we were trained to fix aircraft for 5 years. Then we ran workshops and we did it right. An aviation engineer is always an aviation engineer. Aviation engineers are smart enough. And once you have an engineer education, you go to the management sphere. So each time you can take decisions. But people with a background of engineers find a paradox here, because engineers need precise solutions. So when you used to be engineers and you become managers, sometimes it's very difficult to switch. Well, you have intuition. Well, intuition is a good thing, but it doesn't always work. Igor, thank you very much. Dennis, I think Lufthansa Technik have appropriate capabilities. They are okay. Well, it's difficult to argue with that. It's a big company, and I don't know what topic to start with, because all the issues are important, and I can talk about a lot of things for a long time. So I suggest that we touch upon just one or two topics, because we are out of time. So just a couple of words about the challenges that the industry is facing, that airlines are facing. In my opinion, the most important challenge, along with coronavirus and the collapse of currencies, is the fact that old airplanes are gradually replaced by new aircraft, more digital aircraft, which are manufactured, which produce a lot of information, a huge amount of data. And of course, it's very useful and helpful to analyze this data and to draw conclusions out of this data. In principle, this might be compared to a family, to a couple, where the husband doesn't pay a lot of attention to his wife, and his wife talks a lot. So if the husband doesn't talk enough with the wife, then it can result in a divorce after a while. And I think that the same thing is happening with the aviation industry. I believe that the industry's players need to listen to each other and to do the right conclusions. And as a result, they can save a lot of money on after-sales service. This is why I would like to mention the fact that Lufthansa Technik is a company which tries to be a leader in the industry. This is why we continue developing a system whose main goal is to listen to digital aircraft and draw appropriate conclusions. To be more specific, we try to be more preventive in terms of maintenance and resolve problems not as they come, but we try to know in advance which aircraft component is going to break down, is going to fail, and we do our best to remove this deficiency even before it is there. As a result, we can save on aircraft maintenance. And save the money of the passengers. Thank you. I have a small question to you. At the plenary session today, this question was also asked, and I like this question. If we know how to listen to aircraft, it's very good, but are we going to have the regular maintenance, the scheduled maintenance? Well, I believe scheduled maintenance will always be there, because it's very good to listen to aircraft. So right now we know how to listen to aircraft. We know all the problems in this aircraft. We replace all the parts in advance. But why do we need scheduled maintenance? Well, we really need to actually rub the aircraft with the oil. We need to oil the aircraft. Well, that was a very good argument. But indeed, there is the so-called phase maintenance of aircraft, regular maintenance. Where the work tasks are split into phases. And there are small work packs. And we do them more frequently during smaller periods so that we don't have too many tasks during the heavy sea check. Thank you very much. Now I want to give the floor to Albert. Thank you very much. I represent the UTair airline. And here's what I would like to start with. What is MRO for an airline? Everyone knows that the Russian market is a little bit different from the global one, and even from the market of neighboring countries. We are talking about hangar shortages, but our colleagues next to us are building those hangars. Hangars grow as quickly as mushrooms, and our foreign colleagues do not say that there is a problem. So let's try to understand why this is happening. I think it's all about airlines. Any maintenance organization's main client is an airline. If airlines are successful, if they develop actively, there is ground for development for all MRO organizations, for everyone who is in this business. But what do we see today? What is airlines business? Airlines find themselves in dire straits today. On the one hand, it's a floating dollar rate because we depend a lot on the dollar rate. On the other hand, it's the floating price of petrol because of fuel, because fuel can go up by 15% or drop by 15%, and it affects our profitability a lot. This is why airlines' requirements become simpler than requirements of Western airlines. We need a stable ruble rate. We need long-term contracts, particularly in the winter period, to do maintenance in winter and flights in summer. MRO organizations should be qualified, should have good capability. And we are not talking about excellent capabilities, but we need an MRO organization which would be stable, which would provide appropriate maintenance with appropriate quality and with good logistics. These are simple requirements, but, as I said, hangars are not growing like mushrooms, and everyone understands that an airline is not going to offer a lot of money for this service package because airlines still have to survive and to develop somehow, which is why our market is very specific. Sometimes it's an MRO organization that is part of the airline, sometimes it's an independent company, but it's still dependent because it provides services to its parent airline not for a market price but for a reduced price. So usually it's an affiliated MRO organization. And MRO services do not grow very well. Airlines can't invest a lot in MRO because they don't have incentives. There is no competition. There is no need. What I would like to add is that we are having this situation, but it will change. We are going to see new realities soon. The crisis will be over one day. Stability will start in Russia, and we'll get new aircraft. New aircraft means that we have leasing. Those aircraft already fly a lot. No one can be surprised by 4,000 or 5,000 flight hours per year. It's real because we need to pay back the costs of expensive airplanes. And then MRO organizations will face new challenges, and airlines will have new requirements.
хорошей конъюнктуре.
When talk about this kind of a reality, when the market situation is good, when there is a stability in the market, when we increase the number of flight hours, we will need to turn around the aircraft faster. That's why we will require from the MRO organizations to be more efficient. So we won't be using our internal MRO organizations. They will become market organizations. They want them to develop as pure marketer companies. For example, not so long ago, I faced a very interesting fact from Lufthansa. Lufthansa is able to get enough orders from other customers to the Lufthansa techniques and can also give orders and maintain and repair its own aircraft at third-party MROs, and now the MROs became much better. Now it's top companies and they can do high quality maintenance. And as for the line maintenance, I would like to be very brief if we have time, Artur, but very brief because the organizers re- requiring to finish this session. What is line maintenance? Line maintenance is a very small budget for the airlines and for MROs. It is not a superb profit and not a very high cost. However, the line stations doing this line maintenance, they increase the safety. They also have a very positive impact on the image, and they can also increase the production indicators of MRO, and would be really happy to have a line maintenance station every single Russian station. We have very simple requirements for these kind of line maintenance stations, and that's why we open our own line maintenance station. It is not really efficient, it is not really all grounded, but we have to do it in order to have good operating indicators. What is going to be an ideal scenario of development of a line maintenance operator or provider? I would like to have deal with several companies with many line maintenance stations throughout the country with the same level of quality, with the same scope of services, able to work in different systems like MS, having enough parts on stock. In this case, the airlines can have just one contract, one set of requirements, and the same quality can be provided by a number of maintenance stations. As the CEO a techniques, what cities would you like to have, and what cities would like to have new line maintenance stations? I will give you the list of airports. I'm the first one, after all. We are the first one anyway. And now, Edward, now it's your turn. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I represent the Aeroflot Aircraft Maintenance Department. I don't know how much it's gonna cost to you to open these line maintenance stations throughout of our destination map, and it is quite costly for any company. Doesn't matter if it is an airline or an MRO. And I would like to give you answers to a question. As for the SMS, it is an essential part for the Aeroflot Russian Airlines, even it is priority number one, because even our aircraft maintenance department to have this SMS in place, it was a requirement for the Foreign Aviation Authority, and this SMS system should exist independently, but should be also embedded in all organization system and should be aimed at high safety. Probably we can also can combine it with a quality management system, with a technical control systems. So we had a lot of interesting things we talked probably 5 or 7 years ago, but it is an essential part. We exist within it. So in this case, if we talk about how to accelerate the personnel qualification in order to provide them enough the access permits to different works and activities, that's something what we should discuss separately. It is not so easy. We also would like to help also other companies, because S7 techniques help us in maintaining some of the aircraft types, and also this company supports us even at the SVO airport in Moscow. And another question which is quite acute for us, I'm talking about the staff training, because the Russian colleges, universities, and the Ministry of Education doesn't train the specialists who we can really consider as real aviation personnel. And I think the main task for education facilities is to get this Russian Aviation Authority approvals. What are the questions here? That's probably the next thing. As long as these educational facilities or training facilities do not have these approvals from the Russian Aviation Authority, it will be really difficult to educate real aviation specialists. And what is the second aspect in this connection? We need to differentiate all works. We understand the EASA requirements, because the EASA requirements has requirements to the certifying staff. But if you use staff for any other works which are not within the certification scope, are not described in the EASA requirements, however, the Russian Air Code prescribes that all maintenance works are to be should be fulfilled by certified staff. Probably not so long ago, we got a new definition in the Air Code about the ground handling. It was a very big step forward, but unfortunately, it was just the first step in the development, and the further development is required. It will certainly, if we could be able to use the non-certified staff for some works, it will certainly decrease the lack of qualified people. And we also need to also develop the training system in Russia. As for the hangar space lack, I can only support what Mikhail said. We are probably the only one Russian airline having the long-haul wide-body fleet, so we are probably the ones who are really feeling this lack of hangar space available. But I think the question is pretty different. Are we talking about the accessibility of Russian regions? And here the idea is probably not really well shaped. Probably do we need to set a requirement to the management companies of the airports that these management companies must have hangars in order to be certified? We're now trying to talk that every single point in our airport, in our destination, should have a line maintenance station. That's a Soviet Union. In the Soviet Union, every single airport had at least one small maintenance station. But the reality is different now. It could be a kind of a requirement, but I don't think that this requirement should be an absolute one. As for the projects, yes, we do implement projects, and we all actually really follow what the companies want, because the MRO world is very, very close, and the companies are certainly developing. And in the nearest future, I'm talking about the A techniques and the aircraft maintenance department, will open 2 new hangars for long haul wide body aircraft. It is clear why we are doing it, because we have increased our long haul fleet, and I can also only join what Lufthansa said here. We are now started servicing and maintaining the aircraft in a different way, because A350 is a new philosophy. It's a new step in digitalization or digitalizing the aircraft, because the previous speakers were talking about the diagnostics, and KLM Air France also mentioned during the plenary session about the predictive maintenance, because there is a data exchange between the aircraft and the ground, and it requires a new approach to the maintenance and repair, and it sets new requirements to the specialist. It is just a new level of knowledge. These are the main problems of the current and the future. We are currently in the process. I don't want to steal your time anymore. Thank you very much, Edward. We are probably have no more time available. I just want to tell you a very small idea. I listened to all panelists, and I came up with an universal solution for all tasks set as it is now. We should be able to talk and to agree with the aircraft, with the personnel, with airlines, and with the hangar construction companies. I think this is the most important thing in order to resolve all the tasks. And as soon as we managed to agree, the MROs will reach an absolutely different level, and while life will become better and happier. Unfortunately, the comment is done off the mic. It cannot be. And I'd like to ask one question. You were absolutely right. The staff, the personnel, is the most important thing. If your people really want to stay with you, these people will work with you all the time. If you really invest in these people will be working for you. However, one question remains. What did you give to this person? How do you fulfill the labor code of the Russian Federation? Because Article 44 stipulates that you, as the employer, shall sign a contract with a trade union or with any other organization protecting the employees' right. If people working in your companies are protected by a trade union, they will get some preferences. Lufthansa, what kind of preference do your people have? You're absolutely right. I will tell you about the preferences or privileges. I'm asking you the question. We can fly. Please think about it first of all. You talk about your employees, about your staff. That's the fundament, because the hangars will be constructed anyway. The money will be found and investors will come. But as for people, people will actually leave your company to another one if they can offer 5 rubles more, because they are not socially protected in your companies quite often. I don't really want to answer this question. It's something what we can discuss during the smoking break. Thank you very much.
Уважаемые коллеги, спасибо большое вам.
Dear colleagues, thank you very much for your attention. Now please come downstairs to the awarding ceremony MRO Russia and CIS.